What would you say to your 12-year-old self? This simple yet profound question has sent me on a journey back to childhood to find healing for today. I'm Mike Nicholson, a lifelong educator with over 25 years devoted to young minds. I'm here to celebrate those dedicated to the service of young people and to delve into how they navigate their personal healing amidst the childhood pain they witness in their daily lives. Together, we forge actionable steps to kickstart the healing journey for the young people of today. Join me as I speak with teachers, mental health professionals, coaches, and more, and uncover the wisdom they would share with their 12-year-old selves. Together, we strive to build a foundation for healing that many of us never had. So what would you say to your 12-year-old self? A special note before starting, this podcast is in no way intended to take the place of any kind of mental health assistance. We are simply having discussions about healing and learning and growing. If you need mental health attention, please seek a professional. This episode contains conversations about suicide and sexual abuse. Meet Kohila, holistic mind catalyst, learning success advocate, and education visionary. Kohila is a passionate professional who is committed to assisting teachers and educators in achieving career success. Her coaching approach is meticulously crafted to equip educators with the skills, knowledge, and self-assurance necessary to elevate student learning outcomes and establish thriving coaching practices of their own. But Kohila doesn't stop there. As an online holistic NeuroGrowth learning success coach, she specializes in providing coaching services to students of all ages and their parents. Her focus is on helping students achieve success in all subjects while also cultivating a positive mindset and healthy habits. Using her proven and tested Meta-Learning DeStress Method, Kohila tailors her coaching process and methodology to meet the unique needs of each student and family. Please welcome Kohila Sivas. Kohila, welcome to your 12-year-old self. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is such a pleasure to have you. As I mentioned in the intro, you are somebody who is involved in a lot of things and has turned from just a little bit that I know you kind of, I get this sense that your healing journey that we're going to talk about coincides with a shift in your life as well, whether it was new business ventures or whatever. And I just find that so interesting. But I want to start the same way I start every episode and ask you, tell me about your life at 12, when you were 12. Where did you live? What was your house like? What were you like? What was your family like? What was school like? Whatever you did when you were 12, tell me about it.
It was pretty hard. Life was very hard. So 12-year-old, before that I moved to Canada, so I couldn't speak English. So I decided that I would mute myself. So I was always muting myself at school. So I didn't have a voice at school. So I was the quietest girl or shy. People usually make fun of me and I don't know how to speak back to them. So that type of girl, one thing. And then at home, my dad was alcoholic because of what he lost, because we had to move to Canada. He was an alcoholic. So he was always beating on me for not being the best. He always would, when he gets drunk, he needs somebody to pick on. And it was his kids that he would pick on. And majority of the time, even if I knew my answers, when he asked me, I forget, and then I get in trouble.
Right.
So I would go to bed before he comes home drunk because I don't have to be picked on. But then he would wake me up and pick fights with us. Wow. So that was our life. So that was hard.
So you said real quick, I'm just curious, what he had to leave. Where was he leaving? And it sounds like he had to leave in a traumatic fashion. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I love to share. So we left Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka had a war. It didn't end just about 10 years ago. They ended the war, so it was a big war going on. So we lost everything. My dad had everything back there. He was a business owner. So he lost everything overnight in fire and tragedy. So for him, that was just, he couldn't get back. He came here and he's now working for minimum wages when he had back home had everything for him. So that's a big change for him. So that's why he went into alcoholic. So he had a reason. And my mom, it was always, from our cultural side, she always respects her husband. So she never had a voice in the house. So she just kind of allows whatever happens in the house. She's also scared of my dad in a way, right? So that's what happened. So that's why we had a tough time coming to Canada and then not knowing the language and starting to speak. So I thought the best way to do it, as every child decides by themselves, that I should mute myself. That would be a good idea. No one will know I don't know the words.
What age were you when you came to Canada?
Six.
You were 6. So you spent the later part of elementary school and junior high school muted. Wow, that's sad.
Yeah.
When do you think you started? You went to high school. You went to college as well. Yeah. When did you start being a little more comfortable to use your voice? When you got out of the house, maybe? When you went to college?
No, actually, it happened during high school because I had a ESL teacher. Her name is Mrs. Mayo. You always remember the best teacher you ever had. I still remember her name. And she would always look at me first year in high school. She would look at me and she would say, I know you can speak. And I would just sit there and she would say it again. I know you can speak. I want you to speak.
So when you say you muted yourself, you weren't kidding. That was not exaggeration. You didn't speak. Wow. Okay.
No, I was just a listener. No. And until Mrs. Mayo, no one asked me to speak. They just left me alone. Right? So no one ever came to me and said, why aren't you answering any questions? Why aren't you having a conversation? I always found myself by myself, even during recesses and lunches. I would just, wander by myself, look at things. I just became a deep thinker and just had conversations with myself.
Man, all I could think about is, as you know, I spent many years in middle schools and high schools, and all I can think about is all of those students that were you right now, where all of these, what we would call them loners, or, in more honest times, we might say, man, that kid's weird or whatever. And that's all I can think about right now. And it's just so interesting to talk to that person right now.
That's me. That was me. And on top of it, I had a cultural difference, right? And there was so much to make fun of me and throw rocks at me or spit at me. And all of those were just, adding to that, I don't belong here, right? Then you get into, I don't belong here.
And culturally, there was no connection. You had nobody even close to your culture at your school?
There was few kids, but majority of the kids were, different from different places, or they were Canadians, and for them we were aliens, right? Even on my book I used that word. And in my mind I said, I'm the one who came to their country. They didn't come to my country, so they will have, they don't understand me. I always told myself, even as when I was walking by myself, you don't know me, you don't understand me. I'm I didn't give up inside of me. I had a conversation going that was keeping me very in the positive side of that part. I said,
even
one day
through all
you'll
that,
learn.
when you were in high school, that positive conversation was happening.
Elementary too. I would say to myself, you just don't know me. When you get to know me, you would like me too.
Where did you get that? Where did that come from? Because I can think of my own time in high school and middle school, and I was afraid of my own shadow. I thought very poorly of myself. I never had that kind of perspective. But you had your house wasn't the best place to be. Where did you get that?
Yeah, even with my dad, I would tell him, you know what, I'm gonna make you proud. When he's getting mad at me, when he beats me for not knowing 9 times 9, even though I knew before he asked me. The minute before he asked me, I knew it was 81. But the minute he asked, I forget everything because I'm so scared of him. Nothing works in my brain. So I'm like, why did you forget? I would beat myself up. Like, you knew this. Why didn't you tell him? And then he would make us sit on our knees for, 20 minutes or 30 minutes as a punishment. Those were punishment days, right?
Wow.
And then I'm like, okay, it's 81. I know now. Can I get up?
Yeah, but I knew before too. So you meet Mrs. Mayo and she helps you find your voice.
Yeah, she would always get me up.
And by the end of high school, you were more Outgoing or no? You still just talk
No,
to
I
her?
was quiet, but in between that, something else happened. At the age of 13, I was raped by someone I know who was grooming me from the young age. So that took a turn. So as I was starting to speak and becoming a little bit outgoing, that happened. So that fully shut me down and took me into a different dark space. But then as I was, because it's someone who I knew, and I thought it was, grooming is pretty scary, right? You don't understand that until, I didn't even understand that until I was 35 years old, what that even means. I
Wow.
thought it was love, and it just screws your head up in a weird way. So I
Yeah.
didn't know. So I decided that I would end my life at age 13, because every time I looked at any path, because I was always looking at different scenarios and how it would play out, everything I was thinking in that 13-year-old mind looked pretty scary and pretty stupid or pretty sad. Like, what's the
Wow.
point of living? There's no point of living here.
So you, at that age, at the age we're talking about, and your
13.
youth, the ones who we are now both committed to in our
Yes.
adult lives, you didn't see a way out. You had planned on more than one occasion. It sounds like how you're going to end your life.
Yeah, a lot of planning, but actually one day I did it. Yeah, that was it.
Really?
Yeah,
Did that wake your? How old were you then?
13.
13. What happens culturally? Like, what is, like, I would imagine, like, hearing from what your father's like, what your mother's like, is very different culturally than what we are here in North America. But how was there at least a little more understanding from at least your mom or anything after that, or?
Mom a little bit, but I don't think she understood as much. I got lots of help from my school counselors, all the psychologists and all the people that met me at the hospital, and through that. And because my dad and mom were financially so stressed out, I don't think they could have comprehended at that time what we were going through or what was happening to me. It's more like, I'm giving you food, I'm giving you shelter. What is your problem, right?
Right.
But I
interesting.
didn't tell them why I did it, though. I didn't tell them, anyone, until I was 32, that I was raped. I didn't tell anybody in this world.
Wow.
So they didn't know why I did it. They were clueless why I did it. Most of the time they thought, you're so spoiled. Why can't you live your life? Why are you so miserable, right? But I
Yeah.
couldn't tell them, because the last thing I want to tell and actually put a finger on the person who did it, because they're so close to all of us, that if I did it, it would even screw up our whole family and our life. So I started protecting that person on top of taking all this,
My
baggage.
goodness. That's a lot to put. That's just a lot. I'm so sorry that happened to you. So did you go away to college from there
Yes.
after high school?
Yeah, I wanted to come back to high school, because when I went to the hospital, so that was my change. You asked me what happened in my mind to change and become the person I am. It was in college. It was right after my suicide attempt. I was in the hospital. There was a time that after I did it, I was hoping that I didn't do it. Like, I was having this conversation back and forth, right? I'm like, okay, you made a mistake. Why did you do it? I was kind of beating myself up. And then I was retelling all the stories that made me want to do it. I kind of relived them in a positive way, and then felt like I shouldn't have done it. Such a bad mistake to do it.
So you look at that point as that if I had asked you for a turning point, which I kind of just did, that was it.
That was it.
And you started. That is amazing, from the depths of despair, all alone. I guess maybe with your counselors too, but all alone as a young child, being forced. You had a couple different ways you could have gone.
Oh, yes.
and you had the strong enough will and human spirit to go, no, I'm going to go this way. And I just love that. I love that for you. I love it. It's very inspiring. Very, very inspiring.
So that was my turning point, and from there I thought it was my second life. Like, I started living those the positive stories. Before I was just full of negative, because my life was negative in every possible way, right? So I came back and I said, okay, now that I can leave the world, and also I don't want to leave the world because I've already tried it. Now I got to figure something out. right? I have to do something. So that's when I started applying myself in math. I was very much like focusing on math. Before I was in math class, I daydream, I doodle, and I just fool around in my head, like, doing pictures and stuff. I never paid attention to anything. And I also told myself I'm not smart enough, so why would I even bother? These were the stories. But when I came back, my stories shifted. I'm going to try because I'm given a second chance, and then I even felt like I should have done it. So because I want to live now, let me figure something out. So that's how I landed in the world of math. I started working very, very deeply in math, and I started enjoying math. I started getting better in math for once, and I started getting good results in math. And I'm like, this is me? I can do this?
Clearly, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not involved. I don't have any educational experience with mental health. But do you feel like the math just made sense? Is that part of it? That helped you go, here's something I can control. I can go through the process and I can get an answer right or wrong and move on. Interesting.
I had an answer and I can solve it. That's why I say everything is solvable. That's one of my things I always say, everything is solvable. Because there was an answer, and if it wasn't, there was a wrong answer, and I could figure out why I went wrong. I could go back and figure out why I went wrong. But in life, I couldn't do any of that. I couldn't solve stuff. None of my problems were at 13. I couldn't solve them. They were all, didn't have answers for me.
So I guess when you went to college, then you studied math.
Yes.
With the intention of doing what?
Yeah, I wanted to teach because as I left high school, I had I had these codes. Every math problem, I would write down these codes and I would reuse them. I would test them. I became like a scientist with math, right? I was pulling math apart, breaking them apart, and then I would put it together. I'm like, okay, it works. I'm going to try another one. Does it work? And then I was proving it, and I would have these codes. That's why I named my company Math Codes, right? And now Success Codes. Because there's always a code, but until you find those, it feels like a mess. But the minute you find it, you just have to reapply it, apply it, and it works. And you're like, okay, this is really good. This is amazing.
And really, what you were also looking for at the same time was a code for your life.
Yes.
Right? I find that so interesting, and I'm sure there's so many people who can relate to that. That's amazing.
Yeah. There is a code for life. Yeah.
So then you go to college, and
I tell myself I'm going to come out and teach these codes to my students, and I'm going to give them voice. I'm not going to let another girl, do what I did to myself, right? Because math gave me so much confidence. After that, I was so confident. I spoke differently. I walked differently. And if someone says, you're stupid, I'm like, okay, fine. Just try a math problem with me. We'll see who's stupid.
Man, that's amazing. It's just an amazing, I don't even know how to articulate what I'm thinking, but it's just one of the things that you and I've connected on over the years is the beauty and the magic of learning and education and what that means. And I'm like emotional thinking about how you were saved by math. And as much as I hate math myself, because I'm just not good at it, I'm really just taken and moved by the fact that you were saved by education. There's something about it that is so beautiful to me with that. And I know you did the work, but man, it's just, I wish there was a way I wish I could take that to every student I ever talked to in my office, but anyway, so were you able to do that? Were you able to take those codes and bring it to students when you first got out? Because I know you do it now, but...
Yeah, I went into the school system. I actually started off really quickly as I guess in the States you would call the para help, like for special education students.
Yes.
Yeah, I started off as that, which I loved, because all of those students made me even verify my codes to another level, because I can't just apply the code I had to maybe simplify it and chunk it and, chop into very little codes so they could understand with, someone with autism or ADHD or however the brain was working, right?
And just to clarify, if anyone's listening, a parapro, we would call them in art here, or they call them different names, instructional
Teacher.
aid or whatever.
Yeah.
Generally, they're in classrooms with kids who need a lot more help, lower functioning students.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure we made that clear.
Yeah. So that gave me a world of experience, right? Not only physically getting hurt from some of them and bonding with them, I got bit, I got threatened to be hit, all of those things, added so much experience to my life. And every time I saw any type of behavior, I would just think about myself, and I would just see through all the behaviors. It didn't bother me like other people get bothered, because I know what that's for. I know what's that for.
Because, what a lot of people don't realize too is, and at the heart of what I'm doing here is about childhood trauma, and about, unfortunately, hardening and growing up too early. And so you just touched on something that I'm so intrigued by, and it's, you saw yourself in those young kids, in many of those young kids. So the reason I started this podcast and started this kind of journey I'm on is because upon leaving education and all of those students that I would deal with on a regular basis as a principal or a vice principal, my heart broke on a daily basis for these students, especially the worst of the worst. When they were in trouble, there was something else going on. And it's now a couple years, almost 2 years after retiring, and I've been living this. I've been very reflective about what that meant to me and what that did to me, and what that, here I thought I was just this compassionate soul. I wanted to be this compassionate soul, but I think what I'm realizing is I was reliving everything in my life. But I wasn't someone. I just talked to somebody on another show named Anna, and she's a trauma coach, and we talked at length about the difference between compassion and empathy. And what I realize now is back then I was riddled with empathy, but I was living it too much in hindsight. So I just find it interesting that you, when faced with it, you say you didn't. You were. What do you think that is? What do you think that is that you weren't triggered by it?
For me, I just wanted to help them because I didn't have the help. Right? I didn't have the help. I always thought someone will help me, but no one saw me. No one. So anybody that's not seen, I always want to see them. If they're not seen, I will make sure I see them, I hear them. I love that. That comes from my experience because I was one of those people, right?
Oh my God, I love that, and it's young people often is how it goes. Especially in public schools, a lot of times they just want to be heard, and they're just prescribed to so much. So that's amazing. That's amazing. So anyway, so you were a parapro for a while.
Yeah. So that added so much experience, as you would know, right? Because I had so many one-on-one connections with students, and I knew what I needed to change with my codes. So then I became a teacher, and I started teaching. And because I was with like 26 to 30, sometimes 32 kids, I couldn't deliver my codes. They were not ready to receive my codes. I'm trying, and I'm just becoming a babysitter and controlling behaviors. And I know why they're behaving, but I cannot give the support they needed. I want to give it. So I started feeling like I'm a failure. Why am I doing this? It's not for the paycheck, because it's not why I chose that profession at all, because it was like my calling for what I discovered for myself. So then I said, you know what? Maybe I should start my own tutoring business. This is the great way to work one-on-one. I can start delivering my codes. That would work perfectly. So I did that. I had a great, successful business, sometimes with over 100 students in my coaching business. Again, that didn't go well, because for some people that would have been success, right? But for me, it didn't go well, because over there, when a parent comes to you with their child struggling in something, they want you to give them the magic pill you have. And they just want them to, get me to stuff the information, and their child will go and do the test, and they think that's learning. And I couldn't, stay with that model either, because I wanted them to have transformation. I wanted to have them to learn, and become a lifelong learner, not just take information from someone and just put it on another piece of paper.
And I can see that, because now hearing your story, you personally live that.
Yeah.
You saw how doing that, you experienced how taking ownership of your learning and becoming a learner instead of just somebody who's trying to get a 90 has transformed your life. And you're trying to offer that same thing, and tutoring doesn't allow for that, because those parents are going, I got to do something. This kid's failing. Let me get a tutor to help him pass the next test. Interesting. How long did you tutor for?
Oh, that was since 11 years ago. 12 years ago I left. 24 years, so that was 14 years of it.
Wow. Did you work on your own, or did you work for a company, a tutoring company?
I started with the company, but then I quit from them because I would try so hard with my codes and methods to get the kids so understanding and so amazing, and then the parents would always thank the company. I'm like, how about me? I worked so hard too. They would say, the company trained you so well. I'm like, no, that's my method. They never trained me anything.
So here you go too. Like, not only, so now you're at a point where you're learning a little bit about the reality of being an adult and financial realities of making your own money and being your own boss.
Yeah, and they were stealing from me, because that company back then charged like $150, and they were giving me $19 to go to the house and do all the work. And I also took my car and drove to their house with my own gas money. So at the end of the day, I was making less than $14 to $13. But then they were, not only that, they were then praising the company, like they trained me. So that was the last day of that. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm starting my own business. So that's how I started my own business.
So what's interesting about that is again, I have so much, I reflect so much on what it was to work in a school, and especially at an administrative level. I'm married to a teacher, and you lived this thing where, and I see so many teachers do it now, where you're like, well, I'm helping people. You didn't think about all of the other things. You're like, well, at least I'm helping someone. Why would I complain? Like, that's what why would I complain that, well, now it's different. But for years, teachers would give so much of their time and their own money. And it was just what you did because you were helped, that was your calling. And that's what you were doing. Your calling was to get these kids to learn math with your codes. So you wouldn't even think to say, and it took you 14 years or whatever you did it, to say, whoa. It's wonderful what I can do, but it's not charity either. It's interesting. It's just, I could see getting caught up in that because I lived it. I see teachers all the time that are caught up in, this is what you do. It's just what you do. You make less money than your should be. Your value is much higher. So you then make that jump. You start on your own.
After that, I couldn't work for any companies because, for one thing, I have no control, right? Like, it's in the classroom system too. We have, as teachers, we have no control. Someone's telling us what to do. The hands are tied. I also started sitting in the lunchroom, and I noticed as a teacher, I had to quit that because it was very toxic, right? Lots of older teachers. I was a young teacher at that time. I would be like so excited, and they were like, yeah, you wait for 5 more years. You'll be like us too, counting the days for your retirement. I'm like, no. I'm not retiring like that. I don't want a retirement like that where I can count how many students I failed and how miserable I am. What kind of retirement is that, right? So I was like, yeah, I'm starting my own business. And that's how I went into tutoring, and I was not satisfied. But what I did is used every one of those opportunities. I would say it was my laboratory. I always became a scientist. The day that I left that hospital, I became a scientist in my mind. So anything I do, I'm watching what's working, what's not working, and I'm adjusting, right? Just course adjusting all the time. And I'm studying all the time. I'm taking notes, mental notes, what needs to happen and what needs to happen. And that's how I came and landed on my methodology working with students. I just, again, those are codes, right? I cracked the code in how to help students learn to learn. That's what happened.
That's amazing. And you still don't, the scientist in you, I feel like, is what helps you, like helped you when you were a parapro. It helps it helps protect you from being triggered by the students you're working with and dealing with their, this is the thing that intrigues me so much, because you had a pretty tough childhood, and you are, you're able to really navigate that well, it sounds like.
And
That's impressive.
even during racism and learning all that, and even through the rape, and even at the deathbed, I was a scientist. As you put it now, I can think of it. I was a scientist because I was analyzing both sides. What's working here and what's not working here. How my mind was responding on that, on the day that I did it, and how I started hoping that I didn't do it, and all the reasons why I shouldn't have done. And then all that reason made me want to live further and do what I could do further and start, applying myself. Because until then, I wasn't applying. I was all so caught up in my pain and, all the pressures and everything that was happening to me. I couldn't apply myself into anything. The first time I applied was in my math class.
Amazing. And it changed your life.
Yeah.
So you are a tutor, then you start a business as a learning success coach, which essentially starts a movement, and I love it. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so 12 years ago, one of the biggest reason why I shifted that so quickly is because of my son. I was, at that time divorced, and I had a son who was young. I would drag him to my office, and he would sit there until 10 p.m. looking at me on the corner, like, when can we go home? I would lift him, take him home while he was sleeping to his bed. This was our life. It was pretty bad, I thought I was successful. So I needed to make a shift. And one day he even asked me, Mom, is there any way we can eat at home? Like these dinners, can you please let me eat at home? And I'm like, yeah, we can make that work. And then I started shifting everything. I knew this is not the way I want to grow up my son. He's not enjoying. I'm not enjoying. I'm serving from an empty cup. We talked about that earlier, yeah. Right? The generosity syndrome, which I had. I was serving people for so low. Like I had sometimes over 100 students that would come into my office and out on a weekly basis, right? I thought I was like the superwoman. I could do it all. And I was hurting myself, hurting them. And then I wasn't doing what I really wanted to do with my students, which was coaching. But I started, shifting my code into coaching from tutoring so long ago, because I couldn't do tutoring alone, because I wanted these kids to become a scientist. Maybe that's the word. In their own way, I want them to become a scientist, not just as someone who just absorbs material and then goes out and spit it out. I want them to become scientists so they can start thinking and, creating something in their mind. Yeah.
So can you explain in as best you can the difference between a tutor and a coach? What is that difference that you can you explain that?
So today, if somebody brought me a child who's struggling in grade 5 math, and if they said they're struggling, I would say, what are you struggling with? And they will say, I can't do this homework. I would explain to them that the homework, how to get that done, and I would finish that, and I would say, did you understand everything you just did? And they'll be like, great, yeah, because I got my homework done, right? Because the most important thing for a student is to get the homework done, and if everything is done, I understood.
Yeah.
But that was just the beginning of the process, right? That's nothing. You didn't understand anything because I just helped you. I didn't do anything. But as a learning success coach in the coaching model, you don't even begin with the math. Because most of the time the child is struggling to do their work and understand is not because of math or reading or writing. It's beyond that. There's a root cause to their struggle, and we need to figure what that is. So I don't even work with math. When they came to me, I stopped working, and they loved coming and seeing me. They're like, you're not gonna, they were shocked when I say we're not doing math.
Yeah, I love that when I work with families and we're talking about this kind of coaching or anything to do with education, and I love to keep saying why. When, like you said, what's the problem? Well, he's struggling with writing, or he's struggling with reading comprehension, whatever. But I go, why? Right? You have to, and I'm always trying to drill down to the why, because there's a reason. There's a disconnect. There's maybe a social issue at school. There's one of those teachers that was in your teacher's lunchroom that is in the front of their classroom. They're not reading the right material that speaks to them. I love the why. I love that.
And students need to know why they're struggling, right? Because they need to know that it's not the content. Anyone can teach content. Anyone can learn content if they're ready to receive the content. Mm-hmm. So as a learning success coach, we get them in alignment to learn. That's number one. Number two, they need to know how to control their brain. They need to be the master of their brain and how it works. If you're not in control of your brain, while I'm explaining how to do math, you'll be thinking something else. Like, for example, I used to do. I was thinking about my life sucks, how I should end my life while my teacher was teaching me math. Right? So there are so many things going on in our mind. We need to be in alignment to learn, to receive the information. You need to prep the receiver, and which is in control of that receiver, which is our student. So as a learning success coach, we get them in alignment to learn. They need to be in a certain state to learn. They need to know how to flow through those states. So we do a lot more than start working with math and doing homework.
So talk about, I love your goal, first of all, that you set for yourself and for all learning success coaches. Talk about the movement that I refer to it as a movement. Yes. Can you talk about that, how it started, where it is, how it grew, where it's going?
Yes. So I was going to just push this learning success coaching model through myself, right? I was only one person working in my business. So when COVID hit, it was very successful. Everyone was trying to get online. I already established my business online. So you can imagine I just needed to take more students and then keep going what I was doing. So eventually my business got to a point I was again starting to burn myself out. I'm pretty good at that. Giving and giving and giving. So I needed to stop and say, okay, it's time either to hire teachers to help you, or what else can you model? So because I hated the relationship I had as an employee when I was hired by a tutoring company, how the credit went to the company, not me. I always didn't like that. And because I didn't have a direct relationship with that family either, it was through the company I would relate. Even though I'm there every time in their house doing this work, they would always say, I'll talk to the company. So I kind of felt I don't want to recreate that model. If I hire someone, I'll be the middle person, right? I'll be the company. So I didn't want to recreate that. And I knew that how important the child is to have a direct relationship to a coach. It makes, I want every child to have a learning success coach by their side. If I say that statement, I'm not in between them. So how can I create a business model where I'm in between them? So it didn't align with me. And from my, the day that I was given my second life, I told myself, if everyone has someone like this beside them, they wouldn't do what I did, right? If somebody could have heard me, somebody could have seen me, I wouldn't have did what I had to do at that time. So I wanted to create somebody for them. That's what learning success coaches are. Someone by your side, right? They don't just do math work or science work or English work. They're there to support you in every way possible. So that's when I started creating a program. I went to Costa Rica. That was my place of rebirth. I stayed there for 7 weeks. And when I came back, I had the idea. I'm going to launch and train teachers and educators in my process, and they will have this business that they run independently. So I didn't even go through with the franchise model. I didn't want any of that stuff. I just wanted this pure relationship to exist between the students they're going to work with and the family and themselves. So that's what I did. Now we're on a mission to serve 1.5 million students by 2035.
Love it.
So
how many coaches have you created or trained, or how many coaches of yours are out there now?
We have close to 203 now.
Wow. Okay.
Today, but it's this February is 2 years. That's pretty good.
It's great. It's great.
And we had a scam through Facebook, so we were shut down for almost 6 months of last year. So That's amazing. So if I
Really?
didn't have that, I would have hit like maybe 400. So it's actually something teachers are looking for. It's not just a business. It's actually as you said, it's a movement, and it's a movement to protect our students and families, because there's so much going on in the system, right? That's not helping the parents or the students, and the teachers are trapped. So
And we've had conversations about that before, that the draw of anything like this is any of us that went into education were called to it. And we were called to it maybe because of our own childhood, or maybe because the things we were looking for from our experiences as young people. And then you go into it and you realize, well, I can't serve every student. And I see this child who is me, who has those struggles, and I just don't have the capacity. And quite frankly, a lot of just organizationally, schools don't have the capacity. Yep. And that's what's wonderful about what you do. It's individualized, and it is helping that child understand this isn't your fault. Let's just find a way that works for you, and find someone to coach you and support you. Love that.
And any child wants to be like, we have our own kids, right? How much important to show them that you're seen, what you have is unique. Just appreciating the uniqueness of even our kids, right? And then they flourish, right?
Yep.
But if you just put them into one class and serve everyone as everyone else, you lose that individuality, right? So that's what classroom is. That's what the classroom is. And there you can't serve. And who's struggling and who's suffering, and you still continue to deliver content. That's the hardest part.
Yeah, there's a very small percentage of students that traditional schooling is serving.
Yeah.
And the beauty of what you do is, and what you offer, is an opportunity to tell that kid they can do it. And there's a way, there's a code for it, and we'll work it out. I love it. I love it.
What's your code? Yeah, what's your code?
So what's next? What are you where does this go from here?
Yeah, so the next plan for me is to connect I have built the learning success coaches. Now I want to build the other side of it, so it becomes a holistic, because anything I think always has to be holistic. If it's pieces are missing, I'm not satisfied. So parents are having hard time parenting in this new world, right? There's a lot of disconnect. And even the parents that are new, that are like in their 30s right now, they can't go to their parents to ask for parenting opinions, because they didn't grow up in the same era as these kids who are parenting now. Because of that, their kids are suffering in the classroom, because parenting is lacking. So then the school system is going to suffer, with the teachers are going to have lots of problems. So in the end, the kids are, there's a suicide rates have gone up in teenagers, right? Anxiety is gone up. Depression has gone up in our children, right? Even it's starting in elementary school, because no one's happy with their body. Like girls are suffering from their body image. They want to change every part of it, because our social and society has changed so much, but the young parents don't have a grip. So I'm creating a platform which is going to be personal development for parenting.
Great.
So what skills do you need to master in order to parent in this time and age, so we can still continue to help the kids?
So you're almost coaching parents on how to coach their kids. I love that. It's interesting, because when I started getting involved in learning success coaching, that was my biggest takeaway, is that parents, whether they don't have the capacity time-wise or whatever, they're struggling, and they're looking for any help. And again, schools, as much as they want to help, they don't have the capacity. And I think I had this conversation with you a while back on your podcast, and I mentioned my office and everything beyond the office door. And that was a big aha moment for me. I spent years watching parents and their children struggle with one another, not understanding one another and everything else, and trying to help the parent understand that this kid's got it tough because they're this age. and trying to help this child understand your parents are trying, and it broke my heart that I would, they would leave and we'd have these great conversations and they would leave. And once they're outside beyond my office door, we're out of, I have resources I could give them or direct them to, but there's a lot of work to be done with them. And that's wonderful that you're doing. That's great. That's great.
The next part is speaking. My other brand is, the newest brand is called Blissful Living.
Okay.
So all throughout my life, what I realize now as an adult and in where I am right now is that I've always been blissful. Inside of me, I had a blissful kind of a, attitude. I always would, like, as you mentioned today, the scientist inside of me was a new word that I'm going to use from yours. Is the scientist inside of me always said, okay, you wait and see, we're not there yet. So I always had these kind of little moments, even in the darkest times of my life. I've always had this, kind of a blissful ideas that would pop up and help me through it. And I think that's what life is. Life is not about not facing challenges and darknesses and everything. It comes and goes. But how we deal with it makes a difference. I
have this vision of this little girl in your head with a giant whiteboard. Right, that's what I see when you're telling me these codes and everything. It's like that's what I see, a giant whiteboard where this little girl just working on it, going, you'll see, love it. So do you have anything else you want to share before I get to our final question?
I do want to share something what I call the mind work. We always talking to our children, or even as us growing up, everybody said, have positive mindset, be disciplined, be confident. But when I was growing up, I'm like, okay, I'll try positive mindset. Okay, I'm trying. I'm not getting there, but I'm trying, right? I'm confident. I'm trying to be confident. But nobody teaches us how to get there. They always tells us the resulting word. Okay, I get it. I want to be disciplined, but I don't know how to get to discipline. I don't know how to be confident, but you're telling me I should be, so I'm going to try, but I don't know how to try. So
we always code for it yet.
Yeah, we don't have the codes. So this is my thing. So what we need to stop talking to our kids in those words, because those are the results. It's not tell them the result. Tell them the path to the results. Show them the why to the results, right? Then they now have a process to follow instead of just being positive mindset. So another thing with the mind work framework that I'm developing is that my mindset is a huge word become a huge word, right? But mindset is a result. It's not something I can start working on today because I don't know how. But what we need to work on is our mind stories. Because if I learn how to shift my stories, then I can have a positive mindset. I can have a growth mindset. So that's what happened to me in that moment when I was 13 years old. When I left that hospital, and at that hospital, what happened to me was I was thinking my stories were all negative. Immediately when I did it and I was in the hospital, I changed all of it to be positive. I'm going to miss my mom. Before I said my mom wouldn't care. The day I did it, I said my mom wouldn't care if I'm here or not. But when I woke up, I'm like, oh my goodness, my mom's going to be so sad I did this. Oh no, she's going to be feeling depressed without me. I didn't say that when I did it. It was a different story. So I shifted my stories. Everything shifted. I said, I never get anything. Then I started saying, I'm just going to try. Right?
It's amazing. It's amazing that I see the track of your life from that time. The scientist who's constantly creating codes to make life either better or more bearable. But that scientist is also a coach. You're where you were meant to be. Clearly, you know that, and but in listening to it more objectively, you are always going to be this, and always going to be serving that way. And I thank you for it. I really do, and I think it's a great. I think it's just a wonderful story and a wonderful gift that you're giving the world. So let me end by asking you, again, when I first did this little thing, I read a reel. What pushed me to this, there was a reel on Instagram, and it said, imagine standing outside the bedroom door of your 12-year-old self. What would you go in and say to help them understand that it was going to be okay? You're going to start healing. And it was it drove me to do a podcast, and it drove me to do a lot of things because I can't, it just, that imagery hit me really hard. And I still don't know, and I think maybe that's what I'm looking for at this podcast. I still don't know what I would say. And so I'm curious, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
You are your stories. The stories you tell yourself. You are that. No one else is telling you those stories. You create them. I created that I couldn't speak English. I should mute myself, and that would be the perfect solution to my learning English. I mean, if you ask another person at that time, an adult, they would say that what a crappy idea that is.
Yeah. Wow.
But to me, it made sense, right?
Yeah.
And to this day, that story comes up. That child comes up. She still lives inside of me. Today, if I go to speak, and she still tells me, be careful, you might not know how to speak. I'm like, what are you talking about? I know how to speak. Like, I have to fight with her sometime to make her quiet down.
And you have to change your mindset, which is what you're saying, which you had just said, is that story.
Yeah, story.
Yeah,
story.
That's just a story that somebody else has told, or that you told yourself.
So,
you can just change it. Just change the
story. It's in
story.
my hand. I'm the narrator. Nobody narrated that. Nobody who was racist against me ever told me you can't speak. I told myself I can't speak, I should mute myself. Nobody said just mute yourself. No one told me that.
Wow.
And if I had not muted myself, I could have learned English in like 2 years.
Right.
So fast. I could have made all the mistakes I want. I was a child. I could have made all the mistakes. Nobody even cared how I would have spoken at that time.
But you wouldn't have changed. I mean, you look back now, and that during that time you were muted is when the scientist was building the codes and learning how to survive.
Everything happens for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Everything in our life is a stepping stone. So yeah, that's what I would tell my 12-year-old is, be very careful with the stories you tell yourself and the one that create, right?
Love it.
And that's, no one else is hurting you except your stories.
So what do you have any any feasible, actionable idea or something that anyone who works with the youth, that 12-year-old, that they can do now with that person, say to that person, offer that person to help them understand that message?
So with my methodology, when I was working with the neuroscientists, what we discovered was that the way that I was able to get my students to open up and share what they were sharing with me and how I can get to the deep and the root cause of the problem is I created this resonance. It works on the energy, right? Because I had this up, myself, I was able to open those kids up in a way, and they knew that I wouldn't judge them no matter what. It doesn't matter what they shared with me. Like, I had kids who would come and say, I have a gun. And they would look at me. I'm like, my face would not change. They wanted me to react, right? What do you do when someone says, they have a gun? And I'm like sitting there, and then he would ask me, aren't you scared? No. I just want to know why you have a gun here. I mean, that's my question to you.
Right.
And I would smile like that. And they would be shocked. I mean, I was working with some of the hardest kids, right, in some of these classes, and he would be shocked. And he's like, you don't care? You're not going to tell on me? I said, I would like to know why you have one. But I'm not scared right now, because that's what he wanted me to do, was, become all alert. But I was playing it cool, and of course I have to take the safety precautions to, ask him what's going on and what it is, and then he would say, that was a lie. I'm like, that's not a good lie to lie, right? And then we start talking, and then eventually I would get him to do math. And he would say, that was total lie. I don't have anything. Look, I don't have anything. Look. And he would show me. I don't have anything. I'm like, show me your bag. So we would become friends. Before, if I had reacted the way he wanted me to react, which is stand up and go, okay, we're going to go to the office now. Mm-hmm. he wanted me to react like that. I did, and I gave him the space to make sure that I stay calm and to expose that he was faking, or even if it was real, I would have still remained calm with them. And that's how, so that resonance, I was going for that resonance. You have to get into that resonance, even if it's in a bad situation like that. That was a bad situation, pretty bad situation,
Yeah.
right? So the resonance, morphic resonance is what's called in science. If you're able to get into that energy field with your anyone who's working with you, and it comes, it's not something you measure, it's actually you feel it. I don't know if you you've done some heavy work.
I get it. Yes.
You get it into that zone, and that's where that child opens up, and then they start working for them and working for you. Like if you interview any of my students, they would say that I wanted to really work hard for you and make you proud. But I never told them any of those words myself. I never told them, you better make me proud. Never. From what I was showing them and the care and the way that I started working with them, they felt obligated to make sure that I felt good, and I make sure that she feels proud of me.
That's great.
So when you're working with the students, make sure that they're seen and heard. Whatever it takes to be, to make sure that they see that you are seeing them and you're hearing them, and that creates that resonance. And if you start working in that, listen to their stories.
Love it. Thank you, Kohila. Thank you so much. This was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Special thanks once again to my guest, Kohila Sivas. You can find links to her socials and her websites and all other pertinent information in the show notes. Please don't forget to subscribe or rate the show or leave a comment or a review. Share with your friends. Anything that can get us to more ears would be greatly appreciated. Your 12-Year-Old Self is a Fairmount Media production, and it's hosted, written, and produced by me, Mike Nicholson. Questions, comments, guest suggestions can be emailed to your12yearoldself@gmail.com. That's your 12-year-old self with the number 12 at gmail.com. The theme song is Never a Worthless Moon by Yawns. Logo design by Rose Bear Arts. Digital marketing consulting by Krista Lemon. Social media consulting by Jessica Hawk. Special thanks to Ron Cornwall and Sarah Finney. And my profound gratitude goes out to my wife, Courtney.